The suburban street was quiet, almost unnervingly so. Streetlights flickered softly, casting long shadows over perfectly manicured lawns and white picket fences. To the casual passerby, it looked like any peaceful neighborhood, a place where neighbors exchanged friendly waves and kids played until dusk. But for Alex, something felt off. Alex stood at the edge of his yard, eyes fixed on the weathered wooden fence that separated his property from the sprawling houses nearby. His ram, Rocky, grazed lazily, but even the usually calm animal seemed alert, his ears twitching at the slightest sound. There was an electric tension in the air, a feeling that trouble was lurking just beyond the next moment. It all started a few weeks ago. At first, it was subtle. A letter slipped under Alex's door, a formal notice from the HOA demanding repairs to his fence. The problem? The fence was perfectly sturdy. No one else's fence was being targeted, and the rules cited were so vague they seemed designed to confuse. Alex had thought it was just a bureaucratic mistake, something he could quickly fix and move on from. But the letters kept coming. More inspections, more complaints, and then the strange noises at night, soft footsteps, the hum of voices just beyond the fence, as if someone was watching. Rocky would lift his head, staring into the darkness, muscles taut. Alex tried to shake off the unease, telling himself it was just paranoia. Yet deep down, he knew something was wrong. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and painted the sky a fiery orange, Alex decided to stay outside longer, waiting to see if anything unusual happened. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the distant bark of a dog. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he caught movement, a shadow slipping silently along the fence line. His heart quickened. "Rocky, stay close," Alex whispered, his voice low and tense. The ram's heavy hooves thudded closer, his presence a comforting shield. The shadow stopped abruptly near the old oak tree bordering the fence. Alex's breath caught in his throat. Was it just a neighbor out for a late walk, or something more sinister? Minutes dragged by. The shadow disappeared as quickly as it had come, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Alex's mind raced. Why was someone lurking near his property? What did the HOA want so badly that they would resort to such tactics? The next morning brought no answers, only a crisp letter resting on his doorstep. This one was different. The typed words felt colder, more threatening. Immediate compliance with fence repairs is required. Failure to comply will result in fines and legal action. Alex clenched the paper, anger and confusion bubbling inside him. He glanced at Rocky, who blinked calmly, unaware of the growing storm. But Alex knew this was just the beginning. Behind the serene neighborhood facades, a battle was brewing. What started as a simple fence dispute was about to spiral into something dangerous, something no one saw coming. And in the shadows, the HOA was watching. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on Alex's kitchen table, where the ominous letter lay. Its bold, black letters stared back at him like a challenge. Immediate compliance with fence repairs. The words echoed in his mind, but Alex knew his fence was solid. There was nothing to fix. Still, the HOA's tone had shifted. What started as mere bureaucracy was now edged with something darker. He grabbed his phone, dialing the HOA's office number for the third time that week. The call went unanswered, leaving only the cold beep of voicemail. Frustration gnawed at him. Why would the HOA ignore him when he simply wanted to talk? It was as if they were deliberately shutting him out. Later that day, Alex decided to inspect the fence himself, hoping to spot any problem the HOA might be exaggerating. The fence was old, yes, but strong. No loose boards, no gaps. Everything was in perfect order. As he ran his hand over the weathered wood, a strange noise made him freeze. A faint clicking sound, like a camera shutter, echoed from the other side of the fence. Alex's eyes narrowed. Someone was watching. He glanced around, but the neighbors went about their day as if nothing unusual was happening. Yet the feeling of being observed clung to him like a shadow. Rocky, standing nearby, let out a low grunt and shifted his weight, muscles coiling in readiness. That night, the unease turned into paranoia. From his bedroom window, Alex caught glimpses of movement outside, figures darting between bushes, flashes of light from what looked like security cameras trained on his property. He remembered the rumors about the HOA's surveillance tactics, but dismissed them as neighborhood gossip. Now he wasn't so sure. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Fix your fence, or else." His heart hammered. Was this a prank or a real threat? The days that followed were a blur of tension. Alex found strange footprints near the fence, and once, his garden gate was left slightly ajar, a subtle message that someone had been there. He reported the incidents to the police, but without proof, the investigation went nowhere. Meanwhile, the HOA meetings turned into hostile confrontations. Alex attended one, hoping to appeal to reason. But Mr. Thompson, the HOA's stern representative, made it clear the fence was a battleground, and Alex was on the losing side. "You're causing trouble where there is none," Thompson said coldly. "We have rules. You will comply." The room buzzed with murmurs, some neighbors nodding in agreement, others glancing uneasily at Alex. It felt like a trap closing in. Back home, Rocky paced nervously near the fence. Alex knew the Rams sensed the danger too. Rocky wasn't just a pet, he was a protector, fierce and loyal. One late afternoon, as Alex was mowing the lawn, he heard voices raised beyond the fence. Peering over, he spotted Thompson and two other HOA members inspecting the fence line with sharp eyes. Their conversation was low, but words like pressure, legal action, and intimidation floated clearly. Alex felt the weight of their gaze, like predators stalking their prey. Rocky's nostrils flared. The ram's horns glinted under the sun as he stomped the ground, a warning. That night, just as the neighborhood settled into silence, the tension exploded. A sudden bang startled Alex awake. He rushed outside to find a section of his fence torn down, sawed through cleanly, deliberately. No note, no explanation, just a bold message. Alex's mind raced. The HOA had crossed a line. As Rocky charged toward the breach, Alex realized this was no longer about fences. This was about control, about power, and about how far someone was willing to go to get it. The neighborhood, once peaceful, was now a powder keg, and all it needed was a spark. The broken fence stood like a scar on Alex's once peaceful yard. The jagged edges jutted out, a stark reminder that the battle was far from over. Neighbors peeked cautiously from behind curtains, whispers rippling through the community like wildfire. The question on everyone's lips: what would Alex do next? Alex felt a mixture of anger and dread. Someone had invaded his sanctuary, crossing a boundary that should never be crossed. Yet the silence from the HOA was deafening. No calls, no apologies, just cold indifference. Determined to take control, Alex decided to confront the source head-on. That afternoon, he walked to the HOA office, clutching photos of the fence damage and a copy of the threatening letters. He wanted answers. He wanted justice. The office was deserted except for a woman at the front desk who barely looked up. "Mr. Thompson is not here today," she said dismissively, her voice flat and rehearsed. Frustration bubbled inside Alex. "When will he be back? I need to speak with him about this." She shrugged and returned to her paperwork. As Alex turned to leave, a shadow fell across the hallway. It was Mr. Thompson. Tall and imposing, Thompson's cold eyes locked onto Alex. "I hear you've been causing quite a stir," he said with a faint, threatening smile. Alex squared his shoulders. "My fence was destroyed. I want to know why, and I want the HOA to stop harassing me." Thompson's expression hardened. "The fence is an issue. You've ignored repeated notices. The HOA has rules, Mr. Turner. Rules you must obey." Alex shook his head. "The fence was fine. I have the right to protect my property." Thompson stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't about property. It's about order, control. You're making this personal, but the HOA won't be bullied." Alex felt a chill. Thompson wasn't just an enforcer. He was a man used to having power, and he wouldn't give it up without a fight. "I'm done with this intimidation," Alex said firmly. "I'm not backing down." Thompson's lip curled into a sneer. "We'll see about that." Alex left the office with a knot in his stomach. He knew Thompson wasn't bluffing. That evening, as he closed his gate, a rustling noise caught his attention. Peering over the fence, he saw Thompson pacing back and forth on the other side, muttering under his breath. The air was thick with menace. Days later, Thompson appeared unannounced at Alex's property. His arrival was sudden. No warning, no appointment. Just the cold authority of a man used to getting his way. "I'm here about the fence," Thompson declared, stepping onto Alex's land without permission. Alex's heart pounded. "You can't just come onto my property." Thompson smirked. "The HOA has rights, just like you. Now, I need to see that fence fixed immediately." The tension was palpable. Rocky, usually calm, let out a low growl, stepping between the two men. His eyes narrowed, muscles tensed like a coiled spring. Thompson's gaze flicked to the ram, then back to Alex. "That animal's a liability," he sneered. "Maybe we should handle that too." Alex's blood ran cold. The threat was clear. "I'm warning you, Thompson," Alex said, voice steady but low. "Back off, or you'll regret it." Thompson's grin widened. "Oh, I don't think you have the power to stop me." The two men stood locked in a silent battle of wills, the fence between them more than just wood and nails. It was the dividing line between control and resistance. As Thompson reached over the fence, suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Alex's eyes widened in disbelief as Thompson pulled out a gun, pointing it directly over the fence at him. Time slowed. Rocky let out a fierce snort, muscles coiling, ready to defend. The neighborhood held its breath. What would happen next? The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Alex's yard, but all he saw was the cold, hard barrel of the gun, pointed straight at him over the fence. His heart slammed against his ribs like a trapped animal, breath catching in his throat. Time seemed to freeze. Mr. Thompson's face was stone cold, eyes locked onto Alex, with a chilling calm that sent a wave of icy fear crashing through him. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was real. A threat, life or death, dangling right above the weathered fence. Alex's mind raced desperately for a way out, a solution, anything to defuse the situation. But the gun didn't waver. It stayed trained on him, a merciless line drawn between them. Behind Alex, Rocky stabbed his hooves, a low rumble vibrating deep in his chest. The ram's thick neck flexed as he stared down the fence with blazing eyes. His instincts screamed danger. Rocky wasn't just a pet, he was a warrior, ready to defend. Neighbors watching from windows and porches gasped in disbelief, frozen by the shocking scene unfolding right in their backyard. Phones were hurriedly raised, some snapping pictures, others recording video. The quiet street was suddenly charged with the crackling electricity of chaos. "Put the gun down, Thompson," Alex said through gritted teeth, voice low but firm, hoping to reach the man's reason before violence erupted. "This isn't the way." Thompson's gaze didn't falter. "I'm done talking," he said coldly. "You've defied the HOA for the last time." The seconds stretched unbearably long. Then, a sudden guttural snort shattered the tense silence. Rocky lowered his head, nostrils flaring, muscles coiling like a tightly wound spring. His sharp horns glinted in the sun. Without warning, the ram charged. The world exploded into motion. Thompson's eyes widened in shock as Rocky slammed into the fence, sending shards of splintered wood flying. The force threw Thompson backward like a rag doll. His gun clattered to the ground, forgotten. With a thunderous crash, Thompson crashed headfirst into the nearby horse trough, water splashing everywhere as he sputtered and gasped for breath. The trough rocked wildly, the commotion echoing through the stunned neighborhood. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, chaos. Neighbors rushed outside, some shouting, others frozen with disbelief. Phones continued recording the unbelievable scene. The once feared HOA rep now soaked, humiliated, and disarmed, sprawled in a trough thanks to a furious ram. Alex ran forward, heart pounding, to check on Thompson, who was struggling to his feet, soaked and sputtering curses. Rocky stood tall beside Alex, proud and protective, steam rising from his thick coat in the cool air. The power dynamic had shifted in an instant. Thompson's eyes blazed with fury as he glared at Alex. This isn't over. But Alex was breathing deeply, adrenaline surging through his veins. For the first time in weeks, he felt a surge of hope. The fight wasn't just about offense anymore. It was about standing up to fear. Rocky pawed the ground, ready for whatever came next. The neighbors buzzed with whispers and gasps, sharing their videos and stories, spreading the news like wildfire. What started as a small dispute had exploded into a battle no one would forget. And the question lingered in the air like a storm cloud. What would the HOA do next? The sound of the splash still echoed in Alex's ears as the neighborhood erupted into chaos. Shouts, gasps, and hurried footsteps filled the once quiet street. Neighbors poured out of their homes, phones in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. The moment Rocky launched Mr. Thompson into the horse trough was already going viral. Videos shared across social media, comments flooding in with disbelief, laughter, and outrage. Alex stood by his ram, heart pounding, every muscle tense. For weeks, he had endured the creeping terror of the HOA's intimidation, the secret surveillance, the threats, the broken fence. But now, in one explosive instant, the power balance had shifted. Mr. Thompson, dripping wet and humiliated, glared daggers at Alex. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed, his voice trembling with fury. "You've crossed a line." But Alex wasn't afraid anymore. "No," he said quietly. "I'm just tired of being bullied." Thompson glared, then staggered away, splashing through puddles as he disappeared behind the nearest house. Alex knew the reprisal wouldn't stop here. Back inside his house, Alex's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from neighbors, calls from friends, and alerts from social media flooded in. People were taking sides, some applauding his courage, others fearing the brewing conflict. The neighborhood was dividing fast. The once tight-knit community fracturing under pressure. The HOA, meanwhile, scrambled behind closed doors. Emergency meetings were called, heated phone calls exchanged. The board's facade of control began to crack. They had underestimated Alex and his ram. Days later, the tension turned ugly. Anonymous flyers appeared on doorsteps, calling Alex a troublemaker. Fines suddenly multiplied, with impossible deadlines for violations. Even the local police showed a surprising interest in minor complaints against Alex, raising questions about who really held the power in the neighborhood. Yet through it all, Rocky remained Alex's unwavering guardian. The ram patrolled the property like a sentinel, eyes sharp, ready for any new threat. One evening, as Alex stood by the fence, a shadowy figure approached from the street. It was Mrs. Ramirez, an elderly neighbor who had stayed quiet throughout the ordeal. "I've seen enough," she said softly, handing Alex a thick envelope. "These documents were slipped under my door. They show what the HOA's really been doing, things no one should know." Alex's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside were contracts, emails, and invoices. Proof of corruption, misuse of funds, and a campaign of intimidation masked as community enforcement. His eyes widened. The fight was bigger than a fence. It was a cover-up. Word spread quickly. More neighbors came forward, sharing stories of harassment and fear. A grassroots movement took shape. Residents determined to reclaim their community. The tension in the neighborhood was electric. The once silent streets buzzed with whispered plans and guarded meetings. Alex, once isolated, was now a symbol of resistance. But even as hope flickered, a darker storm brewed. One night, a loud crash shattered the calm. Alex rushed outside to find his garden gate ripped from its hinges, torn down with brutal force. This was a message and a warning. The fight was far from over. The HOA had many more weapons in its arsenal, and Alex would need every ounce of courage and every charge from Rocky to survive what was coming next. The night air was thick with a cold silence, the kind that made every creak and rustle sound louder than it really was. Alex stood amid the wreckage of his garden gate, the splintered wood scattered across his lawn like a violent warning. His fists clenched, knuckles white under the street lamp's dim glow. He glanced at Rocky, who was already pacing, restless and alert. The ram's instincts were razor-sharp, sensing the unseen threat lurking in the darkness. Alex knew the HOA was escalating. What began as petty intimidation had morphed into outright sabotage. But who was behind the gate, and how far were they willing to go? The next morning, Alex's inbox flooded with anonymous tips. One email stood out. A grainy video showing masked figures sneaking into the neighborhood under the cover of night, moving with purpose toward his property. The footage was shaky but unmistakable. Fear gnawed at him. The HOA was no longer just a bureaucratic nuisance. They were an organized force, willing to cross any line. Determined to protect his home, Alex installed security cameras around the perimeter. He also reached out to a few neighbors who had voiced support, forming a small but determined alliance. Together, they agreed to keep watch and share any suspicious activity. But the surveillance revealed more than Alex expected. Late at night, strange vehicles would circle the neighborhood, their headlights off, their presence a silent threat. Shadows moved behind windows, eyes watching. It was a calculated campaign of fear. Then, one evening, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the street like a shroud. Alex's cameras flickered and died, leaving him blind. In that black void, the silence was shattered by a sudden crash from his backyard. Heart pounding, Alex grabbed a flashlight and crept outside, Rocky at his side. The beam swept over overturned flower pots, trampled shrubs, and a gaping hole in the back fence. Someone had been inside. Alex's blood ran cold. This was no longer about rules or fines. This was war. Neighbors gathered in small groups, their voices low and tense. Mrs. Ramirez held a community meeting in her living room, where evidence of HOA corruption was passed around like a secret treasure. "We can't let them win," she said firmly. "But we have to be smart. We need a plan." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for his fence anymore. He was fighting for the soul of the neighborhood. That night, as he lay awake, Rocky rested his massive head on Alex's chest. The ram's steady breathing was a small comfort amid the storm. Outside, the shadows moved closer. The HOA had sent a message, and Alex knew the next move would be the most dangerous yet. The tension in the neighborhood was electric, crackling through every cracked window and whispered conversation. Alex felt it in his bones. Something was about to snap. After days of sleepless nights, strained alliances, and covert patrols, the HOA wasn't backing down. If anything, they had doubled down on their campaign of fear. Alex's phone buzzed late one night. A text from an unknown number. Last chance. Fix the fence or face the consequences. His fingers trembled as he typed back, "I'm not afraid of you." The response was instant. "You should be." The next day, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, a convoy of black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood, windows tinted, engines silent but menacing. Thompson was at the wheel of the lead vehicle, his face grim and resolute. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, their faces pale with dread. The SUVs stopped in front of Alex's house. From the cars emerged a group of men, security personnel hired by the HOA, muscular and serious, radiating the kind of authority no one dared challenge. Thompson stepped forward, his eyes locked onto Alex. "This ends today," he declared, voice cold and final. Alex stood tall, Rocky by his side, their defiance a silent roar. "You'll never push me out," Alex said steadily. A tense silence fell. Then, Thompson pulled out a thick envelope. "Here's the new order," he said. "You have 24 hours to comply. Otherwise..." Before he could finish, Rocky snorted sharply and charged. The security men scattered, surprised by the ram's ferocity. Chaos erupted as Rocky clashed with the men, horns and hooves flying. Alex jumped in, trying to keep the peace, but the situation spiraled out of control. Shots rang out, warnings, but terrifyingly close. Neighbors screamed, running for cover. In the midst of the chaos, Thompson disappeared into the crowd, his face twisted in rage. After what felt like an eternity, Rocky and Alex stood victorious but shaken. The security men fled, their threats echoing in the empty street. But the victory was bittersweet. Alex knew the HOA's true power wasn't just intimidation, it was influence. The next morning, the local news was buzzing with rumors of an HOA scandal, but official reports painted Alex as the aggressor. Neighbors were divided. Fear and uncertainty spread like wildfire. Alex received an unexpected visitor, Detective Simmons, a calm but firm woman who had been quietly investigating the HOA's activities. "We're watching," she said, "but this fight is far from over." As she left, Alex looked down at Rocky, whose fierce eyes seemed to promise one thing: they would face whatever came next together. But as the sun set, a shadowy figure watched from the woods, phone pressed to his ear. "This isn't over," he whispered. "They'll regret crossing us." The neighborhood held its breath. The war for the fence had become a battle for survival, and the worst was yet to come. The tension that had gripped the neighborhood for weeks reached a fever pitch as dusk fell over Alex's property. The once quiet streets now echoed with whispered rumors, watchful eyes, and the ominous promise of what was to come. The war over the fence had spiraled into something much larger, a fight for justice, community, and survival. Alex stood on his porch, Rocky by his side, both silhouetted against the fading light. His mind raced with plans, fears, and the memories of every confrontation, the threats, the broken fence, the gun over the yard, the viral video, the sabotage. Each moment had brought him closer to this final stand. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness. The convoy returned, but this time, they were met by more than just a defiant homeowner and his ram. As if summoned by the unrest, dozens of neighbors emerged from their homes, standing shoulder to shoulder, united. They carried signs, cameras, and a collective resolve that sent a clear message: the HOA's tyranny would no longer be tolerated. Thompson stepped out of the lead SUV, his expression darkening as he took in the crowd. "This is your last warning," he barked, voice trembling with fury. Before Alex could respond, a sharp whistle pierced the air. Rocky charged forward, horns gleaming under the streetlights, not just defending Alex's home, symbolizing the power of resistance. But then, something unexpected happened. The crowd surged forward, blocking the SUVs. Phones recorded every moment. The tide of public opinion, stoked by weeks of harassment, and the viral video had finally turned. The local police arrived, but this time, instead of siding with the HOA, they kept order and listened to the neighbors. Detective Simmons, standing firm beside Alex, addressed Thompson directly. "Your intimidation ends now. We have evidence of corruption, harassment, and unlawful actions. The HOA board will be investigated." Thompson's shoulders sagged, the power slipping through his fingers like sand. The crowd's cheers drowned out his protests. Weeks later, the HOA board was dissolved, replaced by a transparent, community-led association. The fence was rebuilt with the support of neighbors who had once been silent bystanders. Alex's ram, Rocky, became a local legend, a symbol of courage and standing up to injustice. But the greatest victory wasn't the fence. It was reclaiming the community, their peace, their dignity, their voice. As Alex stood outside his restored home, the sunset painting the sky, he smiled and ruffled Rocky's thick wool. Sometimes, it takes just one charge to topple a tyrant, and sometimes it takes a ram.